The rain fell in slow, heavy sheets over the small churchyard at the edge of town. The sky hung low, gray and swollen, as if it too mourned what was about to happen. The only sound, aside from the rain, was a dull mechanical hum of a backhoe waiting beside a narrow grave. The coffin was plain, unpolished, with a smudged tag tied to the handle that read Walter Dean Crane, age 79. There were no flowers, no priest, no mourners, just a funeral director checking his watch, a cemetery worker shivering in his wet jacket, and the sound of rain hitting the coffin's lid. The director sighed and looked toward the empty road, ready to signal for the burial to begin, when the air suddenly changed. A deep rumble rolled through the distance, low at first, then louder until it seemed to shake the ground itself. It wasn't thunder. It was the unmistakable sound of motorcycle engines, 15 of them, maybe more, cutting through the storm. The funeral director turned toward the highway and saw them crest a hill in formation, black bikes with chrome glinting beneath the gray light. The sound was almost mournful, heavy with intent. They pulled up in a perfect line beside the cemetery fence. The first man to dismount was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried the weight of command in his calm stride. His beard was flecked with gray, his eyes hard but not cruel. On his leather vest, under the heavy rain, a patch gleamed. 𝐼𝐮𝐧𝐞 Motorcycle Club, Brothers Until Death. His name tag read Rook. Behind him came others, Bear, Cutter, Jax, Tank, and the rest, men of varying ages and scars, all bound by the same patch and purpose. They moved with quiet respect, no shouting, no bravado, just a steady resolve of men who had come to do something that mattered. Rook stopped at the edge of the grave and looked down at the coffin. His jaw tightened slightly before he spoke. Walter Crane, veteran, mechanic, brother. His voice carried easily, cutting through the rain. The funeral director hesitated, unsure of what to say. You knew him?" he asked. Rook nodded once. "Yeah, he fixed our bikes, fed us when we were broke, talked sense into us when no one else could. The man had more honor than most people I've ever met." The director frowned. "I didn't know he had any family." Rook's gaze stayed on the coffin. He didn't. Not by blood, but family ain't always a kind you're born into. No one spoke after that. One by one, the bikers stepped forward and removed their leather cuts. Each man laid his vest gently across the coffin, letting the rain soak into the patches before stepping back. 15 patches, each carrying years of loyalty and road dust, rested on the wood. The silence that followed was thick with meaning. Walter Crane had been their friend for years. He lived in a weathered trailer park on the edge of town, a place most people forgot existed. His garage sat behind his trailer, little more than a tin roof, a worn-out tool bench, and an old radio that only played country music. But for the 𝐼𝐮𝐧𝐞, it was a sanctuary. When their bikes broke down, Walter fixed them. When one of them got hurt or needed a place to sleep off a fight, Walter's door was open. He charged next to nothing, sometimes refusing payment altogether. "You boys keep the road safe," he'd say, handing back a set of keys. "That's payment enough." He was quiet, never bragged, never talked much about his past. But the framed photo on his shelf, him in uniform, younger, holding a rifle with a faraway look, told them what kind of man he was. 2 tours in Vietnam, Silver Star, a man who'd seen hell and came home just to fix other people's engines and problems. Then one winter, everything changed. The trailer park was sold to a developer named Brent Carter, a man with slick hair, a smoother tongue, and no heart. Carter wanted the land cleared fast to build condos and didn't care who got crushed in the process. He sent letters, notices, eviction warnings. Most of the old folks packed up and left. Walter refused. When Rook heard about it, he and a few of the wolves rode over to see Walter. The old man was standing on his porch, a cigarette between his fingers and a letter in his hand. He looked tired, but his eyes still had that spark. "Don't you worry about me," he said when they offered to help. "I've stood up to worse." A week later, they found him beaten outside his trailer, barely breathing. The police said it was a robbery gone wrong. The wolves knew better. Walter never kept cash, and whoever did it had left behind footprints from heavy work boots, the kind carters hired men wore. Walter was taken to the VA hospital. He held on for a few days, enough time for Rook to visit him once. The old man's face was bruised, his voice faint. "Don't do anything stupid," he whispered. "You boys ride free. That's all I ever wanted." He died that night. When Rook got the call, something in him broke. He didn't yell, didn't curse, just stared at the phone, then said quietly to his men, "Mount up." They didn't storm into town with violence. That wasn't their way. They parked across from Carter's office, 15 bikes lined up like a wall, and stood there day after day, silent, watching. Reporters came, trying to get a story, but Rook refused to speak. The silence said enough. Eventually, Carter himself came outside, trying to act unfazed. "You boys got business here?" he asked. Rook stepped forward. "Walter Crane," he said. "You remember that name?" Carter smirked. "Some old squatter?" "Yeah, I heard he passed." "Tragic." Rook's eyes didn't move. He was a soldier, a mechanic, a better man than you'll ever be. Carter laughed. "You got any proof I did anything?" Rook's tone stayed calm. "No proof, just truth. You're gonna walk away from that land. You're gonna leave those veterans alone. And you're gonna live with knowing we're watching." Carter's confidence flickered for just a second. 2 days later, he announced that he was selling the property back to the city. No explanation, no press conference, just gone. The park stayed open. The residents kept their homes. But Walter was gone. Now, standing in the rain, Rook placed a folded flag on top of the coffin. It wasn't military issued. The wolves had stitched it themselves. Their emblem sat in the corner beside the words "Honor rides eternal." Rook's voice was rough when he spoke. Walter used to say the hardest part about growing old wasn't pain or loneliness. It was watching good men be forgotten. He looked down at the coffin. Not this time. Bay stepped forward holding a small tin of motor oil. He poured it gently over the coffin. His last tune-up, he murmured. The others chuckled softly, some through tears. Then, one by one, they dropped something personal into the grave before it was closed. A wrench, a coin, a patch, a bullet casing. Little pieces of loyalty and memory. When the final handful of dirt was thrown, Rook raised 2 fingers to his lips and gave a sharp whistle. Engines came alive in perfect unison. The sound filled the cemetery, rolling over the hills like thunder. It wasn't noise. It was a salute. A final ride for men who'd earned it. They left as quietly as they came, rain still falling, engines fading into the distance. The funeral director stood alone, water dripping from his hat, eyes wet not just from the storm. He'd buried hundreds of people, but he had never seen a funeral like that. Later that night, the Iron Wolves gathered at their clubhouse. The mood was heavy but calm. Rook sat at the head of the long table, Walter's old wrench resting before him. Cutter broke the silence. "You think he knew we'd show?" Rook nodded slowly. "He didn't have to know. He trusted us." Jax leaned forward. "What now? Prayers?" Rook looked around the room at the men who had become his family. Now we keep doing what he taught us. Fix what's broken. Stand up for what's right. Look out for the ones nobody else sees. They raised their glasses. To Walter, Bear said. The room echoed the words softly. To Walter. The rain tapped against the roof, steady as a heartbeat. For a long time, nobody spoke. Weeks later, a small metal plaque appeared outside the trailer park entrance. It read, "Dedicated to Walter Dean Crane, veteran, mechanic, brother, the man who fixed more than just bikes." No one claimed responsibility, but everyone knew. Every month, the iron wolves rolled through that road, engines low, helmets off, stopping by the plaque before heading out again. People in town learned to recognize the sound, the deep growl of loyalty and memory that came and went like thunder before a storm. Years later, a young reporter found Rook at a roadside diner. She'd heard whispers about the funeral nobody attended until the bikers arrived. She sat across from him, recorder on the table, and asked, "Why did you do it? He wasn't one of your members." Rook stirred his coffee slowly before answering. Because family isn't always blood. It's who shows up when it rains. The reporter smiled softly. "Do you think people still remember him?" Rook looked out the window where two bikers passed on the highway, engines echoing across the fields. "Yeah," he said quietly. "They remember." If you ever drive down Highway 19 and see a small graveyard by the hill, look closely. You might find a set of tire tracks leading to a single grave with a wrench resting on the stone. Some say if you listen close enough, you can still hear the faint hum of engines riding away, a reminder that loyalty never dies and honor doesn't need an audience. Sometimes, the heroes aren't the ones in uniforms or headlines. Sometimes, they're the men in leather who carry a code the world forgot. And sometimes, they're the only ones who show up. If you believe bikers can be heroes too, share this story.